do the research first. And then once you have all that research, you can build and then test that creative against some of those findings that you have. Half of my job is really understanding that first, because that can give you exponential power and you can really fully understand what to do and how you can fit into the market in your own unique way better to stand out. And that's really key. Unless what everybody's doing in the industry and how they're standing out, you're just wasting money if you're just sort of guessing at things. So do the research and find clients that are doing that research or will do that research with you and help you understand the lay of the landscape. Otherwise, you're spending money on something that is decoration, not so much something that's going to be tactical and that's going to be useful for ultimately growing your business.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Today with us is author of the Blindspots Handbook, Brady Dahmer, who is also the founder and CMO of the Central Branch in Tripoli. So excited to have him on today. Brady, how you doing today?
Awesome, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for joining us. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs, what were you doing before that kind of led you into this new journey that you're on today?
One of the key things is that actually within a week, I had two of my friends call me up with stressful situations. I've been in the marketing and branding industry for many years. So a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs will come to me and ask for opinions. I love mentoring people and I've always been a big part of that community. But within a week, I had two people call me up and say, hey, we're in some serious situations. And can you help us get out of them? And I just realized in discussing the situations that there was a huge kind of knowledge gap with people starting down the marketing or branding roads that they're on and working with creatives and anybody in that industry and how to work with them better or the understand or the assumptions that one makes when working with people in that industry. So I saw this gap, and as I started to think through more maybe potential problems that they would face going down and working, doing more marketing, doing more branding projects in the future, I started in the back of my mind creating a small list. And then I did the research. I went out there and I looked for myself being like, hey, is there anything like this? Yeah, or there's got to be something out there to bridge this gap, this knowledge gap. And I didn't find anything. So I started off, as many entrepreneurs can understand, what starts off as a small idea can expand exponentially very quickly. So it started off as a quick little checklist, but there wasn't enough depth, enough information to help them understand how to solve some of these problems when it comes to working with creatives and getting the most out of their creative team. And it kept on expanding and growing to the point where what was a checklist is now almost over 100-page book and framework on how to work with creatives and how to save money and how to get the most from them and from their team.
Definitely appreciate the resource because I feel a lot of solopreneurs, small business owners, we usually have more time than money. So we're looking for a resource and trying to DIY things ourselves. And then that first real investment into marketing or branding or graphics, it's a considerable amount that we hold dear to ourselves. So this first time working with creatives, we want to get the most out of it as possible and avoid a lot of these costly mistakes. So that way the agency isn't spending hours working on something that we're not going to get a benefit from in the end. And we all have these assumptions and presumptions about what things are or are not. So we appreciate you putting this resource out for people to understand. So tell me more about some of the clients that you work with and some of their struggles that now the handbook is now helping them with.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, one of the things in working with creatives, it's not like someone gives you a suggestion, or when we start out too, as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, it's sometimes our networks aren't that big. So we ask who we know, and sometimes we go with someone's suggestion, but it might not be an educated suggestion. We've always heard stories of someone who's working with their neighbor's cousin or their son or whatever else, and who's dabbled in XYZ industry, but they're not really going to get the results. So it's to help people ask the right questions. It's more of a from beginning to end checklist of when you're working on these projects, just what questions to ask. So if someone suggests the neighbor's son to build you a website, you can ask them specific questions on certain things. And they're not necessarily deep or technical. I really wrote this at a very high level, but it is really about asking questions at all the right stages so that you're better informed and getting the most out of it. One of the examples from the beginning of the conversation was one of my good friends called because their designer had done some brochures with them. And of course, they'd shot beautiful photography and they had a writer write all of this stuff. And when they called up their design team to retrieve and do edits on this brochure a year later, they were informed by the design team that their files no longer existed because their computer crashed literally the month before and everything was kind of gone. So at which point my clients, what do I do? What are the repercussions and everything else? The first question I asked her is, where's your copy of it all? We don't think about that. And that's why the book's called Blindspots, because those things we don't think about or the assumptions that we make. And needless to say, the design team, they didn't really need to put their arms up and said, sorry, too bad, zero accountability. And there's really nothing legally you can do because it is so small and everything else. But there was tens of thousands of dollars of creative assets and writing and photography that was now lost for a small business. That's a huge amount of money. So it's written in mine because it is about every hour, every dollar counts when you're trying to start your small business. And this book is meant to alleviate some of that stress and help you make better decisions. And it's also written in short, punchy little sort of ways. So it doesn't go too far in depth, but it gives you the resources to do that. So everything was sort of a startup to small business. This is here to help you make those informed decisions so that you can experience from someone who's been in it 30 plus years, and also interviewing all my friends, all the mistakes that they've made, all the money and time that we've spent making mistakes. It's a collection of that and how not to do it. That's what Blindspots is about.
A very valuable resource. Where can people find out more about that or get a copy or sign up to learn more about it?
Yeah, thank you. Blindspotshandbook.com is the website. And there's a link on Amazon, so both in Canada and in the US. So you can have it delivered to your house within days, or your office within days. And that's probably the best part, but sort of the best place to get it. And I'll be developing in the next 6 months to a year an online course for people as well. So the book is one thing, but we're also love to watch and learn online and visually as well. So I'll be creating that to give some of those lessons and some of these tips a little bit more depth and a little more insight to them.
Very nice. That is excellent. So it's going to be this entire ecosystem that is built off the foundation of the book. But again, some topics just need to be covered a little bit more in depth, or just a different perspective that you can really share through different assets here.
100%. And something like developing a creative brief. The creative brief is kind of like the Bible for us in the agencies or in the design world. It is sort of the Bible of our direction of how we're going to help the client. And sometimes those briefs are very shallow, not well researched. So part of the book goes into that, but giving them even more resources to help create more in-depth research and help them create a better brief, at which point they can get exponentially more out of it. And this is the first version of this book. So I'm going to start going out and interviewing photographers, videographers, web, social, all the other sort of creative industries to see where their blind spots are and work with clients. And then bringing that in and creating more editions and putting more content out there so that when they're hiring a videographer or a writer, they can get the most out of that experience and the most out of their budget and get more value out of the project.
Very nice. And it'll be really interesting once you gain those insights from the separate industries to find where the commonalities lie and what things are specific to either the entrepreneur or even the industry itself. So I think it's going to be a great resource and really telling once you gather that information and the insights from them.
Yeah, one of my photographer friends sent me this quote, which says, with any project, your blind spot isn't what you don't know. It's what everybody else thinks you already know. And that valley of misconception or assumptions in between the creative person and the small business or entrepreneurs. We've all watched the movies and TV, and we see how kind of play business works, or how things, the creative worlds, or how people interact when they do business. So it's not really how that works, but sometimes in our mind, we feel like it does work that way, but there's a lot of steps that are mistaken when we watch fake things on TV or see stuff like that. This is bridging that gap. So
that's excellent. And it's funny you mentioned some of the assumptions that we make from watching play pretend on TV. When I got into marketing, I thought I would immediately become Don Draper and I would start smoking cigarettes and being really cool, but that's not the case. It's different, but that's okay. That's more of a fictitious pretend, make believe. Same for lawyers. The courtroom doesn't work the same way that we see on TV.
That it does not. And that's how people give that understanding of how the real sort of mechanics of a project work so that they truly understand and see where the potential lies, but also where the pitfalls lies as well. So it's not all doom and gloom. This is also about cranking up the potential of your project, the potential end outcomes of your project as well. So it is really seeing where things are, dodging and weaving and getting further faster. And that's what it's ultimately kind of about.
Two words that perfectly describe entrepreneurship is the dodging and the weaving. It feels like we're always on top of our toes. We're always alert. We're seeing what's happening, but it's something we don't really learn until we either experience or we learn from others and they share that insight. Otherwise, we kind of go in blind. And I think that leads into everything that the book goes into. But one piece I wanted to ask about is your approach to designing creatives. How do you either like to work with clients specifically, or do you have recommendations on those solopreneurs and entrepreneurs out there who want to get a taste of what creative and design should be? Should they focus on one thing over another when it comes to their branding strategy?
Great question. So one of the things that we focus on, that first and foremost, if you are starting to hire a creative or branding agency or anything else, ask them about how they approach a project, what research they're going to do. How are they going to understand you, your clients, your industry as a whole? Because that is one of the most important things that is going to be the mechanics, the structure of every great project and outcome. Because if you don't understand who you're competing against, and if you don't understand also your clientele, without a deep understanding of that, any logo, any marketing project you're just spending money on something that looks nice. So that's a really quirky. So for anybody wanting to hire someone to do their identity or any kind of marketing, website, anything creative or anything that you want to resonate with your customer or drive business and everything else, start asking the questions and mechanics of who you're competing against, who your clients are, and all those important questions. So do the research first. And then once you have all that research, you can build and then test that creative against some of those findings that you have. Half of my job is really understanding that first, because that can give you exponential power and you can really fully understand what to do and how you can fit into the market in your own unique way better to stand out. And that's really key. Unless what everybody's doing in the industry and how they're standing out, you're just wasting money if you're just sort of guessing at things. So do the research and find clients that are doing that research or will do that research with you and help you understand the lay of the landscape. Otherwise, you're spending money on something that is decoration, not so much something that's going to be tactical and that's going to be useful for ultimately growing your business.
I completely agree. It goes way beyond just having something that looks pretty. It's really about what does this say about me and the company and what does it communicate to our current clients or ideal clients? And there's so much insight that can be found from asking our current clients, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts? What does this make you think and feel? And through that insight, through that research, you can really get this roadmap to, okay, this is going to be our focus and our clarity because this is what we're hearing from the audience. This is how we need to build this. So that gives you clarity and direction throughout that research.
Yeah, one of the things that people don't often do, and it's such a hugely valuable insight, is getting testimonials or interviewing your past clients. Like, why do you pick us? What makes us stand out? Why'd you pick us versus the competitor? Or all those things. So just client testimonials or client interviews is fantastic. It gives you so much depth and insight about why you're being chosen for industry or product and what makes you different. So it's such valuable insight because then you can tweak that and leverage that even more to get more business and get more people through the door.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Now, for you, having all this experience building your own agency and growing and working with others too, do you credit the success for getting more clients? Are you doing a lot of networking? Are you focusing on outreach? What's been a good strategy for building your book of business here?
The book is an entirely new industry for me. So I feel I'm dipping my toe into something brand new. I'm sitting on the other side of the desk right now from everything else. But for me, for the past 30 years of growing my own business, I learned from a mentor very early that everything's about relationships and creating them and taking care of them. And it's not even just who you know, but it's how you're really kind of being a part of their life and the community as a whole. So that for me is probably one of the biggest things I've learned in my entire life in running a business and starting a business. It gets exponentially easier as you build your network, as you build your community. The support is there and the resources are there. And it's just, you're able to do more because now you have people even behind you supporting it and asking what they can do and all the rest of that. I'm doing more sales now because before I was so used to word of mouth. And that was something where I was building those strong relationships with my clients, with all my suppliers, and I'd network a lot. I'd go out there, I'd be a part of the community. I'd like doing things like interviews and podcasts and dropping into a lot of youth entrepreneurs, mentorship, any way I could be a part of the community and use my experience to help. And that was a great way to meet people. Another thing is sitting on some boards. I'm fortunate because I have a skill and something that a lot of fundraising boards need. They always need marketing and branding, and they have always events and things coming up. So I was in a good position to offer my services to those boards. And it was a great way for me to meet people and for them to see how I worked without paying me. It's one of those things that you're working on a big event and you're doing all the branding and marketing and you're working with them, but they're not paying you as a client supplier, but they get to see how you work. Got a lot of clients from that because everybody on that board and all the suppliers, you kind of put in a little more effort because you want the outcome to be that much greater for the fundraising effort. But you also know it's a showcase of not just your work, but of how you work. And I think with any entrepreneur, we continue working with people that we like working with, that make our lives easier, make us look good. And that's always been stamped in the back of my mind. Just make it a great experience for everyone. And it's easier for them to work with you. And that for me has been one of my staples that I've gone through the business. But the book is another beast entirely because now I'm going to have to change the gears in my brain to become more of a salesperson. It is different. I'm loving it because it's a different muscle that I'm having to flex. And it's humbling, but at the same time.
Very nice. A lot of great practical advice and tips here about building the book of business. And I agree that building and nurturing relationships is really the key to anything. You really need to have some sort of one-on-one connection with the business or the person that you're working with. And a lot of these examples are great ways to showcase your work. and be a helpful resource to the community. And now you're just showcasing who you are and how you help people, what you do. And suddenly people start to take note of that. Now, Brady, we only have a couple more minutes. I wanted to mention that people can connect with you on LinkedIn. We'll have the link available down in the show notes and the description, along with the blindspotshandbook.com as well. I wanted to ask Brady, if you had to start over all again today, I know you're starting on the book now, but if you had to start your business over, what would you focus on first to try and to get yourself out there?
Oh, great question. Again, it's community build. Ask questions, talk to a lot of people, ask them if they were me, what would they need? I started off with the book as well, is going out there and saying, how valuable is this? So before I spent a lot of time, money, and effort putting this together, I really went out and talked to a lot of people and said, I'm thinking about doing this. How does that sound to you? And getting people's feedback and being really open for a lot of feedback. And that's probably one of the biggest things. It's really tough sometimes as an entrepreneur because you think you have this golden idea that's going to be a success and profitable. But for the most part, it's very untested. So for me, just talk to a lot of people and just get their opinions on it. Ask them different questions, see what their feedback is, and also to join a lot of networking groups and see how it can be of value in the community. Another big thing, and that's something where I learned very early as well, is don't be afraid to approach someone that you really want to talk to, that valuable insight. And that was something, some of the people I'd never expect to be able to connect with, or I just asked it, hey, would you have 30 minutes to jump on a Zoom call or quick coffee with me? I'll come meet you wherever. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons. And even now, if someone pops in my brain, like, I'd love to talk to that person, totally unconnected, ultimately multiple levels above me and what I'm doing currently, but I just throw it out there and just a genuinely, like, you want to write a book? Here's my experience. I found that such a huge tool in my toolbox to leverage or get ahead and get the better ideas out and get rid of the bad ideas and keep on working through those better ideas.
That is excellent. And it's something we don't want to overlook. And something specific you mentioned about the product validation phase. We see a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs spend so much time building out something that they think their client is going to want, when in reality, they don't want it, or they built it for the wrong industry, or it's not really what they needed. So you can get so much information and insight from talking to clients or potential clients just to ask them for their feedback. And that can help propel you a lot further than you would before. Brady, we appreciate you sharing your tips and tricks and your wisdom. So excited to watch your growth and your journey. Very excited for the Blindspots Handbook and that progress as it creates this full ecosystem of marketing and entrepreneurship advice. Brady, we appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Much loved it on here, and thanks for the invitation. So I'll come back anytime. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.